Hello girls planers, welcome back to my channel where once again today I'm going to be telling you about one of my new decks that I'm just loving playing. This one's called Counter? I don't even have a lawyer. And you guessed it, it's about +1/+1 counters. For anyone who wants to try this deck out, it will be linked in the description below in my mox field. You might want to get out your dice for this one because there's a lot of counter shenanigans going on, and I don't mean counter spells. So, let's start with the different categories. We have things that give themselves counters. Then we have things that give other things counters. Then we have instant sorceries and enchantments that give things counters because, of course, that was all just the creatures. And then finally, we have regular old removal and a couple other cool cards in there. This is heavily inspired by Caradora, Heart of Alacria from the Aether Drift box that I got. I was just really excited to see this. I didn't have a green-white deck yet, and I've been getting really into Modern. I'd count this as a budget deck. I spent maybe $5 on it, just buying more Caradora, Heart of Alacrias, because I had all the other cards. But if you do want to buy it, it is $9.58, so a super fun budget deck that can definitely win. All right, so first up for categories, we have creatures that give themselves +1/+1 counters. So first up, we have Brightfield Mustang. It's worth noting that this is a mount. It is a 3/3 for 3 and a white. It's a horse mount creature. Whenever this creature attacks while saddled, untap it and put a 1/1 counter on it, and it has saddle 1. So it's really easy to do this. You just have to be able to get it out and have enough mana to do that. And it can attack while saddled pretty easily, and it will get a 1/1 counter every time you do that. Next is Sheriff of Safe Passage. This is for 2 and a white. It is a human knight creature that actually is a 0/0, but it comes in with a 1/1 counter on it, plus an additional 1/1 counter on it for each other creature you control. So you may want to play this one a little bit later, even if you have the mana to do so early, which you might, because it also has Plot, which is for 1 and a white. You may pay this and exile this card from your hand, cast it as a sorcery on a later turn without paying its mana cost, play only as a sorcery, plot only as a sorcery. So you can plot this, and you don't have to play it next turn. You can play it whenever you want. So you wait till you have a really wide board, you throw it down, and it's huge for 2 mana. Also for 2 mana is a really fun card. This is the Showcase Borderless of Tender Wild guide that I got in my Bloomburrow pre-release kit. This is a Possum Druid. It is a 2/2 and it has an offspring cost 2. Offspring means that you can pay that cost and have a token 1/1 copy of it enter as well. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. You can also tap it to put a 1/1 counter on this creature. Last in this category of creatures that put counters on themselves is Voice of the Blessed. This is for 2 white mana. This one is really huge, especially if you combine it with one of the enchantments that's in here. This is a 2/2 Spirit Cleric creature. Whenever you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on Voice of the Blessed. As long as Voice of the Blessed has 4 or more 1/1 counters on it, it has Flying and Vigilance. And as long as it has 10 or more 1/1 counters on it, it has Indestructible. There's not a ton of life gain, if any at all, in this deck. However, there are lots of other ways to get counters on something, which is the next category that we'll go over. Of course, you can't forget the category of creatures that do things when you put or lose 1/1 counters on something, which is the piece that makes this all go around. All right, there's quite a few in this category. First up, let's talk about Giant Beaver. This is a 4/4 Beaver Mount creature for 3 and a green. It has Vigilance, and whenever it attacks while saddled, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature that saddled it this turn. It has Saddle 3, so you can tap any number of other creatures you control with power 3 or more, but you only get to put the counter on one of them. This will protect that other creature if they're blocking, because it only blocks the one that's actually attacking, not the saddling one. So this is a way to get other things kind of sneakily up. Next up is Bounding Felidar. This is a 4/7 Cat Beast Mount creature for 5 and a white. Whenever Bounding Felidar attacks while saddled, put a 1/1 counter on each other creature you control. You gain 1 life for each of those creatures. This has Saddle 2. So this is huge because it also will trigger Voice of the Blessed because you'll be gaining life for that. And it is putting a counter on each other creature you control, not just one. And it doesn't have to be attacking creatures only. So this is a great way to really pump up your board state. Another high mana cost creature in this is Agonosaur Rex. This is an 8/8 dinosaur creature. It is for 3 and 2 green. It has trample, and it's really big and hard to get out sometimes, but if you have enough, great. If you don't, try the cycling ability, because the cycling ability also helps with the counters. For 2 and a green, you can discard this card and draw a card. When you cycle this card, put 2 +1/+1 counters on up to 1 target creature or vehicle. It gains trample and indestructible until end of turn. You can see why this might be helpful. Next up is Needletooth Pack. This is a 4/5 dinosaur creature for 3 and 2 green. Once again, it has Morbid. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature you control. So even if your things die, there might be a benefit for it. Now you might be wondering, Kelsey, where are all the small creatures? Yes, there are definitely a few in there. One of them is Perish Blade Trainee. This is for 1 and a white. It is a 1/2 human soldier with training, which means whenever this creature attacks with another creature with greater power, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. When Perish Blade Trainee dies, put its counter on target creature you control. So this one actually kind of spans both categories because you are able to put counters on something else when it dies, but you first get itself up really big by attacking with something with greater power. Now let's talk about the category of creatures that accomplish something when you add counters or when counters are on something. Einok Bondkin is another for 1 and a white. This is a 2/1 hound soldier. It has Outlast for 1 and a white. You can pay that and tap it to put a 1/1 counter on this creature. Outlast only as a sorcery. It also has this ability: each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has first strike. So this little, maybe not super strong, definitely inexpensive card is really helpful in the context of this because it makes everything on your board so much more powerful, from the small ones to the really big ones. Next, kind of similar, is Sigardian Paladin. This is a 4/4 human knight creature for 2, a green, and a white. As long as you've put 1 or more 1/1 counters on a creature this turn, which you're often doing, Sigardian Paladin has trample and lifelink. So it will have trample and lifelink most turns as a 4/4. That's all right. It also has 1, a green, and a white. Target creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it gains trample and lifelink until end of turn. So it can also give that ability to something else. Think about the Agonosaur Rex. That might be a game ender for you. Marketback Walker. I have this really pretty foil version. This was from my Aether Drift pre-release, and I didn't really know what to do with it then, but obviously this was the answer. So it is, cost is XX, so you can choose what X is, and then you have to pay that times 2. I think that's how that works. It is a 0/0 construct artifact creature. This creature enters with X +1/+1 counters on it. For 4, you can put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, and notably, when it dies, draw a card for each +1/+1 counter on it. So even in death, this is helpful. You want to make sure that your creatures are not only helpful to you just once when you play them or once when you attack with them, but if you can get a range of things that can be helpful to you in all the states of their, let's call it a life cycle, that is going to make it a stronger and more well-rounded game. This one tends to not last very long because they don't want my big XX if I have a ton of mana. Putting counters on things is dangerous, but of course when it dies I also benefit, so my opponent doesn't really want that to happen either. This one is really fun, especially because there's so many other ways other than paying its own 4 mana cost to get counters on this creature. Lastly, but very much not least, in the creatures category is really the heart of this deck. This is Caradora, Heart of Alacria. If this was a commander deck, she would be the commander. Obviously, this is a modern deck, but as you know, I love to build around a theme, and she is it. So, she is a human knight legendary creature. She's a 4/2. You pay 2, a green, and a white for her. When Caradora enters, you may search your library for a mount or vehicle card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. If one or more 1/1 counters would be put on a creature or a vehicle you control, that many plus 1/1 counters are put on it instead. The things that you want to be searching for with this are the giant beaver and the bounding Felidar. Those are really the only mounts or vehicles in this. The original build for this had more mounts and vehicles, but as it turns out, the counters took over, and that's the state of the deck today. So there's 4 of these in here. That's what I was buying when I spent my $5. Having her out on the battlefield, which with 4 copies in the deck is not too unlikely, is going to effectively double the impact of anything that says put 1+1+1 counter on it. Now, it'll only, actually add 1. It doesn't double it if, you put 3 on, but if you put 3, you put 4. And hey, that's still a 25% increase. I think that's how math works. And that's definitely good. Now we've got instants, sorceries, and enchantments that have to do with these +1/+1 counters. So I wanted to make sure that everything in the deck had synergy with this, even if it was, main purpose was doing something else. So I really love these spree cards for this. So we have Requisition Raid here. This is for 1 white mana, but there's 3 different spree costs. Each of them is 1 colorless mana. You can choose 1 or more additional costs to destroy our target artifact, destroy target enchantment, or put a 1/1 counter on each creature target player controls. So this is really, really versatile. You only need to have 4 mana to make all of these effects happen, and that is pretty powerful in my opinion. We also need to protect our creatures a little bit. So here is a combat trick. This is Snakeskin Veil for 1 green mana. It's an instant. You put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control, and it gains hexproof until end of turn, which means it can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control. So it does something good for your overall strategy, which is counters, and it does something good for you in the moment, which is saving that creature. Last but not least is maybe the most useful card in this deck, and there's only 1 of them. I would put 4 in, but I don't have 4, so maybe I'll inherit 3 somewhere, is Hydra's Growth. This is an aura enchantment for 2 and a green. You enchant creature. When Hydra's Growth enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on enchanted creature. At the beginning of your upkeep, double the number of 1/1 counters on enchanted creature. This is huge. Look at all of those things that have bonuses for giving things counters, and even if it's just kind of a more regular creature out of the bunch, it gets huge really fast. What you want to be pairing this with, ideally, is the Voice of the Blessed. These 2 together are very, very powerful, because as you remember, 4 counters means flying and vigilance, and 10 counters means indestructible. And it only takes, oh god, I gotta do the math. You get 1 on the first turn, and then you get 2 on your second. But if you have Caradora out, you've already got 2. So then, you double that, and it's 4. So there's the first one. And then you double that again. And so it only takes 2 to 4 turns to get this up to flying, vigilance, indestructible, +10, huge. It's really hard to come back from that. I mean, sure, you could exile it. But then what if you save it with the instant that gives it hexproof? Oh, it's just so great. It's a great combo. The rest of the cards in this deck are generic removal. There's Bovine Intervention, there's a couple other things, and they don't really have to do with the theme. They're just inexpensive, good, decent removal spells. I hope you enjoy this concept and this deck. I have had a lot of fun playing with it. I'm trying to learn to just attack more. I think I'm enjoying a lot of my modern play because I've learned to be a little more aggressive, just attack with creatures, and then also do some other stuff. But to really simplify your play, just pump things up, make them bigger. I love doing these deck tech videos. I have so many decks that I have in progress, so perhaps there will be more to share soon. And thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel, and I will see you next time.